Welcome, everyone. This is Valerie Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design. And today we're doing something a little different. We are introducing you to a new friend who is well known to us through her father, Marc Harrison. Natasha Harrison is joining us, certainly an artist and a designer in her own right. But Natasha will be telling a story about her father, and we will be sharing with you a video that we made just last Thursday of the remarkable ILZRO house in the woods of Rhode Island that model a way of thinking about how we design our homes. But before we do that, I just want to share a tiny bit of a story about what I first experienced about Marc Harrison. And some of you know that I have been leading this organization for a long time. And I started talking to the organization, and particularly to its founder, Elaine Ostroff, in 1997, so a very long time ago. And Elaine was a remarkable force of nature who was absolutely a pioneer in what we were calling the universal design movement. And it was a thrilling moment. The principles had just been done, and we were going to be deeply involved in a conference that would happen in 98. But in 97, Elaine was giving me the story of this movement. And part of that story was the story of this remarkable professor at RISD, Marc Harrison. And he and Elaine were friends. And she infused a sense of his extraordinary qualities in me at that time. And I'd have to say, it breaks my heart that Marc died the following year and I never met him. But I feel like I have gotten much closer through this process of meeting Natasha and seeing Marc's work in 3 dimensions. And so often it is the physical incarnation of somebody's ideas that really is a thrilling insight into who they are and what drives them. So we are going to be introducing Natasha. Natasha, is Natasha on screen?
I am. I'm here.
Okay, very good. So Natasha Harrison has been so generous in sharing the home that she owns and her father, and stories about her father. Natasha lived in this house as a little girl, and she and her husband, Ben Randall, brought it back to its original design, which is a great gift to all of us that we can see it. And I think Natasha, in so many ways, reflects so much of her father. I want to point out, those of you that can see, Natasha is wearing a necklace that has 2 small icons on it. And Natasha, explain those icons, because I know we have at least some visitors who cannot see your necklace. So describe it for us.
Hello, everybody.
Epitomizes Marc.
My dad's logo was a butterfly and an anvil, which is form and function. When I try to explain it to people, they're like, what? But for designers, you understand what that means. So it was his logo for his design company, Marc Harrison Associates, and it's also on his headstone. We have great friends who are stone cutters, beautiful logo on the stone. So we have a lot of jewelry with the logo, but I had gold necklaces made for our family. So my 2 daughters and my mother-in-law and my sister-in-law and myself and my sister all wear this necklace every day. We all wear them, and we show up at events and we're all wearing matching necklaces, but it's just to honor Marc Harrison. And today would be his 90th birthday, coincidentally.
And we are thrilled to be able to honor Marc on his 90th birthday. We're very sorry he can't be with us, but
yes, he's here. He's here today. I can feel him.
And we want to make sure his impact is understood by people. We're going to be talking about the house today, and we're going to be showing you the video where Natasha graciously hosted ITD last week, and several of us in the house. But I want to make note that Natasha is sitting in the main space of the house, and behind her on the bookshelf is one of Marc's most famous product design, which was the Cuisinart, which was a product that in so many ways defined the must-have, totally inclusive product of the 70s. I mean, nobody thought of it that way. People just thought, that is so cool, I need one. And I think that's one of the aspirations of anybody who does this work. It's that marriage of of function and design, that it is the thing that you have to have and it happens to work. So we are going to share this video with you. But Natasha, if you could take a minute, because I think introducing Marc partly as the phenomenal teacher he was, in some ways 40 years of teaching at RISD almost created active learning. Students built this house, students worked on everything with Marc, but talk about what was extraordinary about your father.
So many things. I hope there are some people out there watching today who maybe knew him or were one of his students, because he did have 40 years of students. And I think he really, that's generations of designers who came through the RISD Industrial Design Department and learned about universal design and learned about the way that he worked, which was very collaborative, very team oriented. This house was a team effort. It was built, it was designed to be able to be built with very few tools, with a layman, not having to be an expert in your carpentry field. He was very serious designer and a wonderful professor, but really in the end, he was a goofball. He was a great sense of humor, very self-effacing, wonderful to be around, a great teacher. I meet people all the time who had him as a professor who say how much he impacted them. So being in this house is wonderful and a little bit sad, and I'm really glad to share it today, and hope that there'll be people out there who are interested in getting more involved and learning more.
Thank you, Natasha. And I want everybody to know that two things. One is that we will do Q&A at the end of the presentation, and Natasha is staying with us, of course, and we'll be able to respond to questions or comments. And we will also be archiving this. It will be available very quickly because we already have the video completed. And we are going to give you a copy of a book about the house, the ILZRO Industrialized Housing System. So there will be a link to download that book that will be included on the website. So I just want to let you know that this is some of the original photos of the house, also drawings of the house, very clear detail about how this house was created. So I think without further ado, we are ready to watch the video. So welcome to the ILZRO house in Foster, Rhode Island. Welcome, everyone. This is Valerie Fletcher. I'm the Executive Director of the Institute for Human-Centered Design, and you are joining us for one of our global webcasts, but you are joining us for an opportunity that we don't usually offer you, which is a live review of an extraordinary man's extraordinary house. We are in the woods of Rhode Island, and we are at a house, the only house that the brilliant industrial designer Marc Harrison ever designed. And we are here with his daughter, Natasha, who is the owner of this house and lived here as a small child. This house predates most everything we know about universal design in many ways, and it was finished and occupied in 1973. And there are a great many things that are extraordinary that we will share with you today. I also want to celebrate that Marc was phenomenal in so many ways in the course of American design history. 40 years on the faculty at the Rhode Island School of Design, designed some of the products in the world that we all know of, but have forgotten who designed them. But this house is the only house. And we are celebrating Marc today, who unfortunately died in 1998. But we are celebrating Marc on the 90th anniversary of Marc's birth in New York City. So this is a very special day. And Natasha has very graciously agreed to share this remarkable story that she knows so intimately of her beloved father. So Natasha Harrison, thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. I'm really happy you're here. I love sharing the house. This was my childhood home for a short period of time. I actually grew up in the house down the street. My parents were renovating and restoring a colonial house. And my dad was a teacher at RISD in the Industrial Design Department. And this company, the ILZRO company, came to RISD, the International Lead and Zinc Research Organization. It's a mouthful, and it doesn't exist anymore. But at that time, it was the ILZRO house. And they came to RISD and asked, the story that I heard was, we have these metal panels. Would anyone like to build a house? And my dad said, sure, as he did with almost everything. So he took 8 acres off of the property, that pretty large property that we had, and got a bunch of students and friends and colleagues from RISD and designed this crazy metal house in the woods. We left in 1977. We moved to the Newport, Rhode Island area, and a great friend of my dad's was the head of the apparel design department at RISD, Lorraine House. So she bought the house and took it on and loved it here. Loved my father and kept the house like a time capsule. All the furniture, all the fixtures, and just the spirit of the house she really occupied. Um, Unfortunately, she needed to move out and go to a facility. She did not have children. And her nephew got in touch and said, you know, we feel like you should come and take a look and maybe you could take it. And she always wanted me to live in it. I don't live here, but we did restore it, did a lot of preservation, a lot of things that she wasn't able to do as she aged that we kind of completed. So,
And your husband, Ben, actually was part of the magic of being able to restore this house. So just introduce Ben by his talents and
my husband, Ben Randall, was a great friend of my dad's also. He really was the son my dad never had because he had 2 daughters. And he's a woodworker by trade, a fine cabinet maker, but he's really a MacGyver. So even though it's a metal house, he was able to basically do all the things that we needed. It's not a house you can call the window guy or any guy. You got Ben Randall, and he's figured out how to make it work and put a lot of love into it. And both of us, even with just the plants and the landscape and the trees. So it's been a labor of love, and I feel like we've brought it back to, you know, where it needs to be for sustainability. It needed some updating, and we're really proud of being able to be here.
And we're so grateful that you did. One of the stories that I just want to make sure that we've noted up front is that Marc Harrison had an extraordinary accident as a small child, and it had a profound influence on his life as a designer. We might call Marc a user expert, but I think it's important to talk about Marc's sledding accident. Can you tell that story, Natasha?
My dad grew up in the Bronx. He was born there, and when he was around 11, he was in a sledding accident, and a sled went over his head, a sled runner, and he was brought to the hospital that happened to have a doctor who saved his life. But he was in the hospital for months. He was in a coma. He got hepatitis. It was very, very, very harrowing for him and for his mother. When he came out, he had lost all of his formative years walking, talking, reading, and writing. So he was tutored in the mornings. My grandmother had another child who was 11 years younger than my dad, so clearly she was panicking. But he spent his mornings with the tutor, and then he spent his afternoons in museums and galleries. And so I really think that the visual information that he absorbed during that relearning is a big part of how he was as a designer, but it also changed his personality. He was a very unusual person, and you can talk to any student who went through the 40 years of teaching it. He was a very extraordinary personality. He was somebody who just made you feel like you could do it. He really did, and he did it for me, and my sister, but he also did it for scores of students. And so he had this project involved his students. That was his trademark at RISD, was to bring in companies and corporate and interface them with the students so they could have a real world experience. And he loved to see that. And this was the first real example of him doing that. And it set him off into his career, not only in universal design, but in the philosophy of how he taught. And at RISD, they still do it that way. So it's been a really cool to see sort of this was the beginnings of that ethos.
It's a great story, and I think everybody who pays attention to our global webcast knows that we are fascinated by brains that work differently, and that we see lived experience always as an advantage. So this is a great story on so many levels. So Natasha, we're in the main room of the house. And one of the things that you could not possibly appreciate about this house from looking at pictures, and I've looked at all the pictures, the quality of light is astonishing.
Yeah.
And I think it is partly what was possible in a metal house. Through the particular process in which this was constructed and assembled. And I think that is part of the magic of the place. I mean, I think it is hard to communicate adequately the quality of light and the quality of acoustics.
Yeah.
So talk about this. We're in the living room with the
Yeah.
kitchen right next to us in the dining room.
We're also in the middle of the woods, and there's a lot of green and sort of filtering through the trees. And as the day goes by, if you wake up here in the morning, the way that light shifts, especially with these upper windows, it kind of has this sort of magical, it has a really great quality of light throughout the day, and it shifts all the time. And it's a metal house, so with all the doors closed, it's very hushed. And and I said to you earlier, you can't get a cell signal in here. It's like a giant walk-in refrigerator. But yeah, this is the living room. This is the original room. We've always had a wood stove. We're in Foster, Rhode Island. It's very cold here in the winter, and we get a lot of snow. So it's a beautiful place to be in during a snowstorm. Original couch, sort of made to be modular, but we've had it in this configuration the whole time. But I've thought about just shifting the whole thing around so you're looking out at the beautiful woods. I changed the color of the couch. That's the one thing that we did change. I tried to stay totally true to my dad's intentions and the fact that Mrs. House, who lived here, had kept it so carefully, but it was a terrible color, and I think he was colorblind. So this is the color I chose. It's one of the only influences I took liberty of. There's a lot of drawings on the wall. My dad was a real doodler, and he did some real extraordinary drawing. So I love having his work on the walls. And obviously, one of the turnstiles for the MBTA, that was his design. So just to showcase, and also obviously the Cuisinart, which has a perfect spot. That was his, the thing that kind of he's most known for. A lot of people don't know about this house because Mrs. House lived here. So he's known for the Cuisinart. Maybe someday he'll be known for the ILZRO house also. So yeah, it's all the zinc. You'll see that a couple of things in the house that are notable. The plugs are higher up. They're not to code, just nothing is to code in this house, but the plugs are a little bit higher up. So if you're in a wheelchair, you can get your plug in.
And that's a universal design standard now.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know
So
that.
he was inventing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to think about a product that most of us know, the Cuisinart, which was a must-have product of the time.
Yeah.
And Marc's intent was to create something that was easy to use, even if you had hands that didn't work well.
Yeah.
And that you could read what you had to do to get what you wanted if you had low vision. I mean, nobody was really thinking about that.
Yeah, there's nothing fiddly. There's no little knobbies or tiny little calibrations. It's, the movement of putting it on, hitting the buttons. That's it. It's sort of like
53 years ago.
Yes. And they still, America's Test Kitchen still says it's the best one on the market, that original one. It's got a great motor and it's a classic design. It's an iconic design. So
it is indeed. I want to just point out one small thing that your father did, that all of the light switches are paddle switches, which in 1973 was a rare idea.
Yeah, it was
now
rare.
it is incredibly pervasive. Everybody has
Yeah,
one.
it was notable enough to make it into the little publication that they did. And now you don't really think about it, but it was unusual. Door handles also, a simple lever rather than that turning knob.
Became the norm.
Yeah.
But was in 1973 was not.
Well, he had to have them made because you couldn't buy a lever. You couldn't just buy it. He had to have things made to his specifications. There's a lot of this oak in the house. I think it was sort of to juxtapose this, the metal and the zinc. And I also think that it was on sale. And so down the street, this was a shoestring. It wasn't a fantastical luxury build.
Right.
It was built to be something that any layperson could figure out how to build it. It was using sort of a simple erector set system.
And simple tools.
Yeah,
to assemble the panels. Right.
So
students actually did most of the labor.
Yes,
right?
yes. And like my dad said, a bunch of derelict pirates, the rest of them, because he wanted no credit. He said, don't look at me about that house. But he was very, self-deprecating and would never take credit for anything. It was very much about the team. And it was we. It was always we, not I, with my dad. Yeah.
One of the most unusual aspects of this house is something that you wouldn't notice right away. And that's that everything can be attached by magnets.
Yep.
So let's talk about the magnets, because that is I mean, I think we all wish that we had houses that where everything could be
Yeah.
attached by magnets.
It's
but-
okay, except artwork isn't really designed that way. So we figured out a lot of different ways to get the magnets onto the back of the artwork because, but I've figured out every kind of magnet hook you can buy, every different little, but it's sort of a novelty in a lot of ways, but it gives a lot of versatility.
Well, and I think we were talking about moving lights,
Yeah.
and we'll go in the bedroom later, but being able to get the light at exactly the point you want the light,
Yeah.
kind of a nice idea.
Yes.
Let's go into the kitchen.
I am here with Megan Dufresne, who is a senior designer at the Institute for Human-Centered Design. I'm so glad you're here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about this kitchen here in the ILZRO house. The first sort of obvious aspect of it is that the counters are at two different heights. For me, I'm tall. I love this higher counter, but when I was a kid, when I lived here, these cabinets weren't here and you could get underneath to be at the stove. And also there was a small sink there so that it was an easier access sort of nearby. I don't know if that.
And it's great to have so many options for different types of people in this kitchen, and to have areas where people who may have trouble at the standing cooking would be able to sit under the stove.
Yeah, it works out. It works out well. Over here, small little thing is, the house is made of metal. So this is where you get to see that everything's attached with a magnet. So this is when I'm cooking, this is where I put my pot holder. And if I'm feeling a little, I'll put it down here instead.
Yeah. It's like having a whole fridge for a house. Usually people just can hang things in one place.
I mean, you could put all your pictures here, you could put everything. Here's the oven. This is the oven that we replaced what was here. It's the original left-hand open oven. And down below, a handy little item is this pull-out countertop. So if you are having any dexterity problems or you're in a wheelchair, you can put what you have there. You don't have to worry about, wobbling it around. And then once you're done and you take everything out, you can just slip it back away.
And it's amazing that this was put in by your father at such an early date, as this is required in Massachusetts by code now.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah, well, in 1972, I think they were just sort of throwing things at the wall to see what stuck, and they thought this was a good, easy way to provide a better experience. So I appreciate it. And I use it too. I love cooking here, and I use it all the time. It's just convenient. These are the cabinets. These are these sort of funny metal cabinets that we've always had. My dad loved these. They sort of just a clever
space
design, but they are very high up. So if you are not very tall like me, or you're in a wheelchair, you could preload in these funny little containers your everyday things that you use, and they're just at your fingertips. So it's a reused idea. The ones when we bought the house, they were all yellow. They were just melted. Someone had the toaster underneath, and we got online and found them on eBay. I think I bought them from somebody in Norway. But they're just like a fun way to keep all your stuff convenient.
And these smaller ones are for spices.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. When I was a kid, I've always been a tea drinker, even since I was a little kid. So I had the last three from my different tea selections. And then we put a new dishwasher in. We put in this drawer dishwasher, which a lot of people have now, but it is so convenient, I think, depending upon anything that your height, or if you're in a wheelchair, works out. If you're sitting down, you can still see inside. Of course, this is the high countertop sink, so we don't have those sinks anymore, but.
And I do notice that he put the controls out front, so they're easy to reach as well.
Yeah.
But that's for the garbage disposal.
Yeah, garbage disposal and exhaust fan. Yeah. That's the kitchen.
Natasha, you told us a remarkable story about your deep connection as a child to this house, but you had a surprise experience of being affirmed when you were cleaning out the house.
Yes,
so tell
I
us
did.
about the yellow watering.
Well, I was a real fan of Lorraine House, and we had talked a lot about the house and what was going to happen to it. And when my husband and I came here to look at it and check out, the details, just reassess kind of what's going on with the house. And we were looking in these cabinets. I was looking for a map, and I pulled out this yellow watering can, and I said to my husband, "This was mine when I was 6." And he said, "Does that mean we have to buy the house?" And I said, "Definitely." So we bought the house, and one of the things that's been very helpful is this publication that the ILZRO company and RISD did about the house. And not only does it tell the story, it talks about the fastenings that were used. The underneath, the air handling system is mapped out. There's photographs of my mother modeling in a wheelchair in the wheelchair accessible areas. So it's been, and you can see in the pictures of the house, the color photos, that nothing has changed. And it's really remarkable how well Mrs. House kept it. And so we followed this as sort of our Bible to make sure that we were staying true to the intentions of the house. And also for my husband, who was doing all the work, this was the map and the guide for what we needed to know. So,
And it's full of detailed drawings. So,
So many,
Natasha has given us permission to share this. So when this is archived on the ITD website, this link to the book will be available. We're thrilled about it. And actually, Mark's car.
yes, his Alfa Romeo. There's a good story about how he got it. I don't think I'm allowed to tell it, but he was in Florida at some sort of conference in the airport. The airline was late. He said to his friend, "Let's go across the street and look at this car dealership." And he canceled his flight, bought the car, and drove back from Florida. I remember being on the other end, my mother on the phone going, "You're doing what?" So he loved that car.
Oh, it sets a very nice
Yeah.
frame for your father's identity.
Let's go look at the master bedroom, all the details. I am here with Sean Marley Duncan, and tell us about yourself.
I am a neuro-inclusive researcher and designer at IHCD, and it's my pleasure to be here. It's such a beautiful and really tranquil spot, honestly. I think the bedroom has a real kind of feeling of peacefulness that's echoed throughout the house, but it's pretty centralized in here. One of the things that I really love is that the windows are able to let in some natural light, which is something that kind of is echoed throughout the house, but the windows are facing a direction so that it kind of has a more minimized feeling in here. Tell me a little bit about some of the unique features in here.
They're all original cabinetry. This bed was actually the smaller bed that's in the other bedroom. We wanted a king size bed in here. I thought maybe we'd buy one, but we couldn't buy one. So my husband made a replica of the smaller bed in a king size version. So the bed in the other bedroom my dad built, and the bed in this bedroom my husband built. It uses some drawers from a project that my dad did for a mobile Red Cross blood donation unit that all fits into a truck. And so my dad was sort of grabbing what he could. He had these drawers. That's what we used. Once again, the magnet comes in handy. If you're in bed and you want to move your light, you just put it where you want it on the metal wall.
That's pretty fabulous, I
handy
have to
item.
say.
Yeah, and there are no curtains on the windows in this house, but because of the magnets, we have these hooks, and I just kind of like my daughter when she's here, we'll just hook a little curtain and then take it out so that it's not
I can see you guys having a whole accompanying product line of magnetic features. I think this house also really shows what you can do when you're working with really simple ideas, but you still are allowed to have that access and freedom that when we're designing for brains that work differently, oftentimes we're really justifying with people their worth of being able to have modulation of little details. It doesn't have to cost, $1 million to do. It can be as easy as having a magnetic panel or kind of building it into the actual infrastructure of the building. So I think that's something that's pretty special about that space. And I certainly know my lights, I'm always knocking my head on the light like next to my bed because of its proximity. That's so great.
There is no perfect location for everybody's body. So this gives you that sort of flexibility. And these are the original lights, and they're, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't.
Hey, pretty good. For how old is that light?
1972. We're doing good.
That's pretty great.
So I'm here in the bathroom. Mrs. House, when she lived here, had changed around the original setup. So we decided to completely gut it and redo it to try to make it as accessible and inclusive as we could with our limited knowledge. But the original sink was pretty unique, and I'm sorry that it's not here anymore, and we're hoping to get it replaced. The original panel that it fit into is here. It was actually one piece of metal that did ceiling wall right into an integrated sink, and it was made with something my dad called super plastic metal. It was bent, it was formed. He used bowls and pots and pans and formed it around some, Marc Harrison crazy way as he did. So there's a picture of it here. It's a basic, accessible shower. Works well. People have used it who are in need of an inclusive designed bathrooms.
So Natasha, there's a story about this
Yeah,
unusual
funny story. This is just our placeholder for the spot that there was a double trunked tree that was here, and my dad built the deck around it. Didn't want to cut down the tree, so it lived until we bought it in 2020, and by the time we got to it, it was gone. So we had to cut it down, sadly. But I wanted my husband to leave the stump so that you could still see what the intention was. And this deck is actually the second generation deck. The first deck was painted wood, which didn't last, in a shade of gray, of course, because my dad loved gray. This is first generation Trex, and Mrs. House actually asked the RISD Industrial Design Department if they felt it was appropriate for her to use. They said yes. I hate it. My husband likes it, but it serves a purpose. But trying to stay kind of in tune with the environmental aspect of the house. So this is what we have, and we can go around and take a look at the other areas.
So the deck goes around the whole back.
It's all around, yep.
So Natasha, this is such a wonderful outdoor space that's attached to the house with this deck. But part of what we're also about to see is how do the systems work in this house, this very unusual house. And there is a door over there that is sort of a door to how does it all happen? How do you keep it all running? And we're going to take a look over there now.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the first thing we have is this little crawl space that you can get all the way under the house.
Why don't you come on down now?
In order to do repairs underneath, and my husband goes down there. I don't go down there, but it does get you underneath, and you can go on a creeper like you put under a car and scoot all around, and then there's an area at the end, I guess, to turn around and come back. So there's a lot to see under there apparently, but this area is what really sold us, my husband, on buying the house because it's so unusual. This is the utility room.
And Malcolm's going to give you a hand. So Malcolm, we have
So you take one
a
of these
little
handles
muscle here and
this way out, and then pull it. So I like to call it a submarine door. It has this amazing hardware inside, and as you can see, our air handler, water, all of this stuff is in there. And last year we replaced the HVAC system, and I had a number of companies come and take a look and never call me back. So we finally found someone that worked with my husband to figure out how to get everything back in there so that we could get a whole new system. We had the original electric system. We were heating this house with an electric thing from 1972. The first year we had it, I heated it to like 50. That January, it was a $750 electric bill. So the person who finally replaced it said, this doesn't exist anymore. Everybody on earth has replaced this system, but you have the most inefficient system you could possibly have. So things have changed. Now I have this beautiful temperature controlled. I can control it from my phone. I can turn it on and off. So it's a joy, but it was a little bit of a harrowing process to find someone who could really help us. It's not the kind of house where you can just call anybody.
they'll never call you back.
No, never call me back. Exactly.
And I think part of what's so fascinating is that this is an outside door.
Yeah.
And this survives tough winters and
Really tough. We had a lot
snow
of
and
snow here.
rain and it.
Yeah, we had a really bad winter with a lot of snow, and this thing is all pristine. So it works.
Thank you.
Yep.
So now we'll just sit in the living room for a few minutes. So Natasha, we are almost wrapped up with our session today. We are in your debt. This is so terrific.
No, I'm so
your
glad.
father would be thrilled. I am sure your father would be thrilled.
You would.
And you very well represent the Marc Harrison story. I think as we wrap up, I'm going to bring everybody in to sort of talk about this experience. And I think one of the things that we haven't mentioned that I think is important is to understand that Marc died young at 62, still very much in the peak of his extraordinary career. The RISD kitchen was featured in the Cooper Hewitt show. It opened 1 month after Marc died. And it's important to note that Marc actually died of a very significant disability, and that was Lou Gehrig's disease, so ALS. And ALS took Marc's ability to walk again. So Marc actually learned again at the end of his life that this is about the human condition. And part of the joy of Marc's contribution in that last show, which was dedicated to him, was that the show is called Unlimited by Design. I think Marc Harrison represented a guy who understood what design can do. And I think his daughter has very nicely represented that same vision of what design can do. And I think being able to perpetuate this story and to share the delight of your father is so precious a gift to us and to our audience. We're thrilled.
No, well, thank you for coming. I love telling the story, and I love sharing the house with people, and it really, having students coming and seeing the house and experiencing it and seeing it through other people's eyes has been really wonderful. He did spend the end of his life in a wheelchair. He understood disability from the inside out, he said. He laughed. He thought it was funny that it was ironic. He had the best sense of humor. He had no problems at the end. He felt like he had lived a great life, and he was really excited that he had even lived that long after his accident. I think he really was grateful for every day. But being in this house is really, brings it all back. It brings him into my heart. It's a little bit hard sometimes. The house really does need to go be part of the world. It needs to be activated. I don't live here. The house is here, ready and waiting for somebody to come and utilize it. I really, I'm not attached to it at the final end of it, but I do believe that it needs to be shared with the world. So I'm open to an invitation for that to happen, because I am not the person to do that. I don't think. I think my husband and I have done our part, buying it and bringing it back from sort of a little bit of derelict state. But now it has another life in it. It has a story to tell, and I'd like it to be out in the world. So I'm hoping someone will be interested in joining us or being part of the process of the next phase.
We certainly hope to aid and abet that in any way.
Yeah. What about you guys?
I mean, I think we have an undergraduate here. This is Malcolm Levy is doing an internship with ILZRO this summer. He's an undergraduate in architecture at Connecticut College. And this is sort of your first exposure to Marc Harrison and to this whole way of thinking about design. What do you come away with, Malcolm, in terms of this experience today? First of all, you probably come away with the idea that students had so much to do with building this house.
Yeah, they did. They really did. Well, whether they liked it or not, we don't know, but they were stuck.
So thoughts on that? I mean, what strikes you about this experience of actually being in a house that was put together by students and was envisioned by a remarkable professor of design?
It's excellent to finally be inside a structure that was designed specifically to be sort of the most as inclusive as it could possibly be, and I have gained a lot of insight that I hope to use in my future projects to design in ways that include and respect everybody. And having learned about all the features in this house, up close from the person who knows them best, has really helped with my understanding of that.
Thank you.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And then Sean Marley, I think, brings a different set of eyes to this, and somebody who has played a central role recently in our work on designing for brains that look differently. So in terms of your impression of the house, Sean Marley, what are you left with here? What is special about this place for you?
I think I am immediately struck by, well, first of all, the profile of the house kind of floating in this beautiful sea of ferns has a real spaceship quality to it, which we've all certainly talked about it. But wrapped up in that, there's an excitement that there's still future left in this house that we haven't yet seen in the designs that already exist. There's a lot to play. I think there's something really lovely about the humility that all of your dad's designs carry with them. They have such, there's things you've pointed out to us where you've said, well, this one didn't work, but this works great. And it seems like that was a central ethos throughout his work. And so being able to have students involved, like you said, your dad was all about things being built as a team. That to me really strikes at the heart of what makes thinking with a universal design perspective special, because it is about having all hands on deck and kind of recognizing what special capabilities each set of hands have. And I'm thrilled to be in a space that feels so full of play, and also so full of mixed use of materials. I mean, it's really great that sometimes, as they say, having the little drawers that create so many opportunities for playing around and kind of improv with materials and that sort of thing, I think is pretty special.
And I think one of the things that all of us are struck by in the house visiting today is that Mark had this accident as a kid, and it appears his brain worked differently, and that was an advantage.
Brain definitely worked differently. I can attest to that, and everyone who knew him.
And I think the proof is in the work that he did, and how extraordinarily important this issue of it's brains and bodies. We bring brains and bodies into every environment that we experience, and he got that in a way that very few people did at that time. And I think it's just a tremendous gift to be able to experience this in the house, and Natasha's generosity, along with your husband. We have seen ample evidence of the impact that Ben had on making this transformation to the original state so feasible, so possible.
It's a beautiful space, and I think you bring up a wonderful point that it's integral to have brains and bodies that work differently being there as designers during the design process. And that is something that's so evident through all of these successful designs. It's not just designing for people, it's designs by them as well.
I think that's my true desire, is that we'll be able to share it in that way, that this can be a little bit of an inspiration for designers to see, and also to be revolutionary, because it was 1972, and it's hard to explain it even now to people about, I say universal design, and now I'm going to say inclusive design, which maybe is easier for people to understand. But in my life, I spend a lot of time explaining to people what that means. We still don't understand it, but in 1972, it wasn't even on the board. So I'm really proud of my dad.
You're
right. Sure.
Those people who
It's remarkable.
made the point, it's not about them, it's about us.
Yeah. So I think I'm hoping that we'll be able to share it with more designers and people who are interested in thinking about perspectives of use, use in the home, the use of your domestic spaces. How do we live? Everyone lives differently, but how can we make it so that it's really universal, or as close to universal as we can? I think it's a great challenge, and there's never the perfect answer, but this was his attempt at that answer.
Perfect closure.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
And this will be available archived within 2 weeks. And we will be sharing the publication that Natasha has generously made available to everybody. So that will be something that you can download.
Featuring some wonderful photos in there.
Thanks so much.
Thank you all.
Good, boss. Thank you, Natasha, and thank you, Sean Marley and Malcolm. And a special thanks to Remy Allegro, who did a great deal of the shooting and editing, and of course, under the leadership of our producer, PJ Moynihan from Digital Eyes. So we are very grateful for the opportunity. Please do, I hope there are people in the audience who have thoughts, questions. We'd certainly love to hear from you. We have I'm actually wondering if there are people who may have studied with Marc Harrison. We don't have anybody who has stepped up, but let me just make a plea that if there are any of you participating, please let us know that you're there. Please let us know what your experience has been. We'd love to be able to share that with the larger audience. But we have our ever reliable colleague from Tokyo, Dr. Nat Hosono, and he said, we remember that Juan Mace was a wheelchair using architect, as well as leaders of universal design with his 7 principles. That was actually a group of people, Nat. That was 5 organizations, including the Center for Universal Design, where Ron was. But the ILZRO house is the same concept with him, or something modified. No, this predates the principles of universal design by a very long time, Nat. This house was finished in 73. The principles were completed in 97. So Marc Harrison was really a pioneer, and his involvement with a very special project at that same time, actually it was somewhat later, but it was in the 90s. It's called the Universal Kitchen, with 2 other directors, including Jane Langmore at RISD, and creating a kitchen at 3 sizes that really exemplified everything that this vision of universal design stood for. Everyone can use everything. So these were early pioneers. Marc, one of the very earliest. And how is the comfortability of the toilet of the house? Because he's of the Japan Toilet Association, and the Japanese are very concerned with that. So Nat, you may have heard Natasha say that they reinvented the toilet, the bathroom, and so they've done their best to make it work without all the details that we might add to a fully inclusive bathroom. But it has the space, it has the shower, it has the toilet. So I don't think we will know much more about how it works without somebody actually being in there trying it out. But thank you, Nate. Really, Nat, I always appreciate hearing from you. Anybody else have? We are shy.
There's a question. It looks like asking if there were ever ramps.
Yes.
And,
let's talk about that.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me that, and there was an intention for a ramp, but I will tell you, I think they ran out of money. And Mrs. House moved in, and it was sort of like my dad had moved on. I believe that obviously it doesn't make sense to not have a ramp because it is a wheelchair accessible home. But yeah, at this point, I would love to sort of honor that and put it in, but we haven't had a chance to. But there's a spot for it, and it really does need it, I think.
Thank you, Kate. Appreciate you asking that question. We should have mentioned that earlier. I do want to mention that Natasha is well into the process of applying to the National Trust for Historic Preservation here in the United States to add the house to that very prestigious group. You want to talk about your status on that, Natasha?
Yeah, we have, through the Rhode Island Historic Commission, very helpful, hired a consultant to write the nomination to get the house on the National Registry of Historic Places. And I'm hoping in the beginning of next year, it'll be done and accepted. And it's been a really interesting process. They're looking at it through the lens of industrialized housing. They're looking at it through the lens of Marc Harrison's sort of universal design legacy, and also just the history of accessibility and design in the United States. So I haven't read the final document yet, but it is it's in the works. In the works.
Good luck with that. I trust it will actually work.
Yes.
Chris Flood, who's one of our guests, is asking, any trouble with rust and what kind of insulation. So would you just explain that structure? And I think we want to begin by explaining that this house cannot burn.
Yeah, it's metal. It is metal panels that have the insulation built in. At the time, they said it was very, very efficient, but obviously now we know a lot more about efficiency, and the R value isn't as high as it could be, but there's nothing we can do to increase it. Because it's zinc, there's no rust. I've never seen, there's not any rust. It's just metal. It just stays the way it is. The underneath the floor is insulated with just regular insulation. But like I said earlier, it is kind of like a giant walk-in refrigerator. If you've ever worked in a restaurant, it's those metal panels that are insulated, and so it works both ways. It's great to have them, but like I said, we can't improve the R value very easily. So it is what it is.
One of the things it also cannot do is it won't grow mold.
Hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a metal house has qualities that are very unusual.
Yeah.
So there are things that protect it from some of the worries we have about so many of our houses. We have a question here from Ricardo Gomes, who is a member of our board of directors, also an early pioneer in the universal design movement. And he is asking, what was the thought of the curvilinear windows and door frames? Thank you, Ricardo. That visual shape, where'd that grammar come from? Nautical, aerodynamic, do you know?
I think it was an effort to show the qualities of the material, that bent, curved window and door frame was just to exemplify the zinc, the metal of it. Just to say this is the material and this is what it does. Much like I'm sitting next to the bar where you can see there's also this curved bar, which is that super plastic metal that I mentioned earlier. I think it was just to sort of show visually what the house is made of, and that this metal is not all angles. It's got this other quality, this bendability.
And more questions. And let me just acknowledge Ricardo Gomes is a professor of industrial design, many years of duration, and he has been chair and is now emeritus at the San Francisco, the San Francisco State University. So he's a major player internationally. So Ricardo, I don't know if you ever met Marc. Let us know.
He asked about the deck connecting the doors, and interestingly enough, my family owns an Elliott Noyes house on Martha's Vineyard, and if people who have been to that house and this house see, there was a real design influence from that house that we still own. So the house is a cube on a full surround deck in the middle of nature, and so looking at it through that way, I think my dad was really inspired by that sort of inside outside smooth over. There's no barrier to get a wheel over into the deck. So if you're in a wheelchair, you have easy access to the outside, and it's not trying to get off. And once you're here, you can still access the outdoors. And but the influence of that house, that Noyes house, is the design influence is really obvious to the people who know both houses.
And I think, I'm not sure if he's joined us, but Fred Noyes, Elliott Noyes' son, was going to be joining us.
I see he's on the list. Yeah, great.
Yeah. And Fred, please jump in. And Chris Downey, a dear friend and longtime leader in universal design. Chris is an architect who lost his sight mid-career, so he is known as the blind architect. He is also, this is the first time I've announced it, Chris Downey is a new member of our board of directors. Chris says the timing of this house and Marc's non-codified approach to accessibility and design for different bodies and experiences seems so closely parallel to the teaching pedagogy at the time from Ray Lifshay at UC Berkeley. Is that a name that you know, Natasha? I have to say your father must have known of Ray, at least in my experience. Yeah. Elaine Ostroff, founder of this organization, was a dear friend of both of them. So I think
Really
she
positive.
knitted them together for me.
Our all of my dad's papers and letters and drawings we donated to the Hagley Museum, as well as Thomas Lamb. My dad was the executor for Thomas Lamb, who's the designer of the Cutco knife handle. All went to the Hagley. So if anyone's interested, you could go searching through. So, a lot of it is digitized, but a lot of it isn't. So that name does not sound familiar, but you know, he knew a lot of people and I was a kid, so I have no idea.
And Ray is also now no longer with us, but Ray was a powerhouse of influence, including the engagement of students in solving design problems. I mean, I think he was transformational in the way your father was, that engaging students in real projects for real people transformed their entire careers. Is there any record or knowledge? Chris, I think this is worth looking at. And we have another dear friend who is a local architect in Boston, who comes from two parents who were high-profile architects. This is Josh Rosewood. It's so nice to see the house, Natasha. It's pretty amazing. Thank you. And Valerie, my question to you would be how living in the house and watching your father's design process influenced your own artwork.
Hi, Josh.
You were immersed in design.
Josh and I are old friends. He also owns an incredible house called
He does
Kingston,
indeed.
off of the coast of Jamestown, Rhode Island. So I'm very familiar with that house, and I can't say for sure that it influenced my work. I think my grandmother and my mother's work probably is very organic. And I went to RISD, but I majored in glass blowing, so I am not a designer the way my dad was a designer. So I think he personally, the way he was influenced my work, but living here, I think being in nature is what it has influenced me growing up in the middle of the woods. That's a big part of what I identify with as an artist. All of my work is very nature based. And my dad was obsessed with flowers, with the design of flowers. He had a wonderful lecture that he gave about the perfection of the design of flowers and how it relates to, the design world and his way of thinking. And my mother was a sculptor, and she did a lot of work about flowers and nature. So he had a love of nature, even though he grew up in New York City. He loved being in the woods. He loves being out on Martha's Vineyard. He's buried on Martha's Vineyard with my mother and my grandparents. So yeah, I'm an artist, but I definitely don't have the design chops or sort of interests that my dad did.
And Fred Noyes has indeed stepped up. Fred, thank you for joining us. As Valerie suggested, I did indeed. We saw each other last week. Love the influence of my father's design house on Martha's Vineyard, and I think it's wonderful to hear it, described by Natasha, who knows your father's work well. I think it's also important to just note that the curved use in all the windows and doors is actually, I would think, partly because it could be done so easily that I think they were describing. I think Marc himself described zinc as plastic metal, that you could do anything with it. That there were no constraints to it, so you could get shapes that weren't common.
Yeah, for sure.
And Ricardo's asking about the frames too, because the frames are so distinctive. I assume these frames were custom fabricated. It appears no. He's wondering if Marc might have been referencing Bucky Fuller's Dymaxion design philosophy or forms. Was your father influenced by prefab housing?
Yes, and in the book, when you can all look at the book. The end of the book are all of the different versions of houses that they designed to use these panels. I think the ILZRO company imagined that it was going to be this revolutionary way of building, and that you would have all these choices, and you would kind of take these elements and be able to create different kinds of things. I don't know if he was influenced by Buckminster Fuller, but definitely the prefab housing idea, that was the intention of the ILZRO company, was to kind of commercialize this system of building. And my dad called it the biggest failed experiment, because right after it was done, there was a big crash and it never went anywhere. and they never made another one from the panels to our knowledge. This is the one and only that the ILZRO company did. That company split into a lead organization and a zinc organization because they're really not the same. The interior walls of this house do have lead lined sheetrock, which is the weirdest thing ever, but there is lead inside. There's no exposed lead. The only exposed metal you see is zinc, but there is lead inside the interior walls, which my husband found out the hard way when he was trying to drill a hole to get the new oven in. And so this crazy metal lined sheetrock is what's inside the interior walls. So the interior is also magnetic. I don't
Fred
know.
has commented again about the vineyard and the long history here with the Rantouls. The Rantouls were your grandparents.
That's the Martha's Vineyard house. That's my mother's side of the family, and they were friends with Mr. Noyes, and he designed the house. So yeah, they're old friends from New Canaan, Connecticut.
And actually, I grew up with them. He actually went to school with your grandmother.
Oh, yes.
Who was apparently called Dee Dee then?
No, my mother. My mother is Dee Dee.
Your mother. Oh,
yeah, my mother is Dee Dee Harrison.
Yes,
Dee Dee
of course,
Ranch.
that makes sense.
Yes.
So it was your mother. Anyway.
Oh, that's funny.
Similar
Wow.
intent, design is for the user.
Yeah.
All these remarkable people who raised the bar at that moment in time. And I think we have no more comments, so we can let you go, but this has been such a pleasure, Natasha. And we are so much in your debt. We wish you the best with the quest for the National Trust for Historic Preservation to make the right decision. I expect they will.
Yeah.
And we certainly hope that many, many more people will see this story, and we will share it as broadly as we possibly can.
We have a website, ilzrohouse.com, and also feel free to contact me, because I am really hoping that something will come of all of this out of our to be the thing it needs to be. If that makes sense. But we're in this moment where the house is done and it's poised, and it's going to go to the next thing. I don't know what it is, but if anyone has an idea, you can get in touch with me.
Natasha, would you put your email into the chat, please?
Yeah, I will. I'm glad you guys all got a chance to join, but definitely come visit if you feel like it. And here in Rhode Island in the woods. Yeah, Natasha at ilzrohouse.com. That was me. Thank you so much, Valerie. Your team's great.
Thank you, Natasha. A real pleasure. Wishing everybody a good long weekend coming up here in the United States. And we will long enjoy this good story. And somebody will look at your father's papers and find out if the equally extraordinary Ray Lefshay and he were in touch. My guess is they were.
Yeah. Great. Thanks for joining.
Thanks. And thanks everyone for joining us today.